Hello. Hey, imagine waking up healthy one day and the next day your entire world just falls apart. Well, that happened to me almost exactly 20 years ago. Um, what happened next was a battle for my health, my sanity, my life, and my future. So I'm going to tell you about how I got disabled overnight with this chronic illness and survival tips to get through something like that and living on Social Security disability because those are really three different issues. This one is just about how I became disabled overnight. So I was very successful in a corporate job, and I was the director of sales for a large corporation. So I would have to fly out to where my sales reps were all over the US. And many times it was, 3, 4, 5 hour flights in these small airplane seats. And then I would be driving or, riding in a car with my rep for hours every week. I also wore heels back then with the skirt suits. Remember those where you wore a skirt that matched the blazer that went with the skirt? This was 20 years ago, so it was a little bit different than it is now for working. But here's what happened. I was very successful. I was traveling a lot. I had a very, very fast-paced life. And all this traveling was taking a toll on my body. I was only 43 years old at the time, but I mean, I could tell my body just started aching, when you're in airplanes that long or in cars that long or, high heels. It takes a toll on your body. So I would swim every night in these hotels. And I was a competitive swimmer when I was younger. I swam on the city swim team. And when you're a competitive swimmer, you swim and swim and swim your hardest every lap. You don't stop. And that's what I did. I would get in these hotel pools and I would just swim laps until I could not swim even one more stroke, right? Because that's what you do when you're a competitive athlete. So one day, like I said, one day I was fine. I was healthy. And then I swam in this pool in a hotel. I went to bed around 9:30 that night. And I woke up, I'll never forget. I woke up, it was 2:35. And back then we didn't have cell phones. So I remember the time because, we had the clocks on the side table with the phones. The phones plugged in. That's 20 years ago, folks. So I woke up around 2:35, like I said. And I was having trouble breathing. I sat up in the bed and it was really difficult to breathe. So I went to grab the phone to call the front desk. Well, I had to sit down on the floor. I could not catch my breath. And finally I decided I wasn't gonna be able to get up to call the front desk. So I don't know how I did it. Somehow I got that heavy hotel door open to my room. And I crawled down to the front desk. I'll never forget, there was a young man. He was very young, working the front desk. And it took him a minute to even see me because I couldn't speak to say, I need help. And I was crawling on the floor. And he finally saw me, called 911. And that's when this whole saga started. I had a health crisis. A health crisis. I didn't know what was happening. Things just changed. It wasn't even overnight. It was from 9 o'clock till 2:35, right? I mean, your whole life can change. So my body started shutting down. By the time they got me to the hospital, it took them a minute to get me to wake up. I woke up, I was on oxygen. They were, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Because here's the thing. With this kind of illness, it's not like a normal illness. Like, when I say normal, I mean it's not something that's common, right? So the hospitals, many that I went to in the next few weeks after that, they didn't know what to do with my symptoms, because what would happen is I would feel better. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I went through 27 doctors. 27. And here's how I know that. 27 is not a good number for me. There's two reasons why. The first one is I went through 27 doctors, and I ended up in a major lawsuit with the hotel. It happened to be a large hotel chain, one of the biggest in the world. Although this one happened to be a franchise. It's a little bit different when you sue a franchise. Anyway, so I went through 27 different doctors. I finally went to Cleveland Clinic, and there was 4 doctors in this tiny little exam room. Because I went, it was a pulmonology department at Cleveland Clinic, which is about 5 or 6 hours away from me. I actually we had to call 911 halfway there because I couldn't catch my breath. Anyway, I finally made it to Cleveland, and the pulmonologist, he started talking to me, and it was similar to the way I'm breathing now. I had halted speech, and so he says, hold on. He says, don't talk. So I didn't. And all of a sudden, 4 other doctors come in this tiny little exam room. And he told me to sit up on this stool, and they wheel in this, back then, it was a VCR on a cart, right? Like they roll in, in high school for you watch a movie. So he rolls that in. These other 4 doctors come in, and he puts a scope down me, and one of the doctors says, oh, there it is. And it scared the crap out of me. I thought, oh my goodness, I've got, some kind of, even though it came on overnight, I was thinking, oh my gosh, he sees something that means cancer, or, your mind goes to the worst thing, of course. And what happened was, he saw what they call a chink, CHINK. I'm not sure exactly what it is to this day, but it took this pulmonologist, it's in my notes at the Cleveland Clinic, it took him over an hour to get me to believe that it wasn't in my head. Yeah, because these 27 doctors I had gone to, they didn't know what to do, so I feel like a lot of them, probably a third of them, said it was in my head. Because if I didn't talk or exert myself, meaning I didn't use my breath, my air, my respiratory system would settle down and I would talk normal. Now, mind you, even today, as I'm talking for this video, you'll see other videos. I just did one on, a long one, on tips for saving money when you live on a low income. And it was a very long video, and I was fine until towards the end of the video I started losing my voice and my air. I've been sick for a couple of days, what we call a sick week. My doctor's night. Sick week, how do we explain? A normal person, normal adult person, breathes about 18 to 20,000 breaths a day. Now, this pool I was in burned my respiratory system and my vocal cords. So imagine every breath you take is hard on you, right? I only have so many breaths until I have to stop what I'm doing or stop talking. And like I said, even now, if I would stop talking and let my body catch up, I would talk normal for an hour or two, just depending. I'm on a course of antibiotics and steroids, and I have a lot of daily inhalers and things. But take a second here. So the reason number 27 is not a lucky number for me. In this lawsuit that I had, there were lots of lawyers involved. And I had to see a life specialist. And what this guy did, he looked at my diagnoses. He looked at, at that time I was on 16 different medications, and, it was bad. I couldn't barely speak at all back then. I had to take quite a bit of breaths in between each word. So this guy, for the lawsuit, he had to analyze everything and figure out how many years off my life this illness was taking. You talk about a sobering fact. The number was 27. 27 years was the number for the lawsuit that this expert came up with of how many years my life would be shortened because of swimming in this stinking hotel pool. Remember, I said it was 27 doctors I went through, and I know that because of the lawsuit. I was 43. If you do the math, 43 and 27 is 70, is what my life expectancy was supposed to be. I turned 64 soon. You think that doesn't weigh on my mind? I mean, yes, I know it's all about God's timing and God's will, and I'm sure this guy was wrong. Of course he was wrong. Of course he was wrong. But that number sticks in my head. Now I'm putting together a video about how my life changed for the better when I got sick. and how what I learned from this was I know my body better than anybody. And if you're going through something like this and they can't figure out what it is, and you know whatever diagnosis you've been given is wrong, or they say it's in your head and you know it's not, you keep going. You go to another doctor and go to another doctor until you feel they have the answers. And yes, it might not be the answer that you'd hoped for. Maybe you just hoped it would be, you just need rest, or one medication is going to take care of everything. But here's my rule. If I go to 3 different doctors, usually I end up at Cleveland Clinic. I feel like this doctor saved my life. He took care of me for 18 years. 18 years. He just retired a couple of years ago. So now I'm on the hunt for another pulmonologist that understands my dilemma. By the way, I had one doctor. I really tried. I loved my job. So every week I'd go to the doc and he'd say, I'm going to give you a written excuse. You take this week off and rest. And I hated doing that, but I couldn't travel worse than this. It was worse. In the beginning, it was worse than this. I couldn't travel like that. So I took the week off, and then, sure enough, I would be better. I would be better after a couple of days. So the following week, I'd fly out to wherever, and I would give myself some time. Instead of going directly to be with a sales rep that same day I'd fly out, I would go to the hotel and get a room and just rest that night. Well, the next morning, every Tuesday morning that I tried to work, I would end up in the ER, whatever city I was in, because I couldn't breathe again. Long story short, here's what. The chemicals they use in hotels would upset my respiratory system. So, they use things like bleach. And any kind of chemical will send me running these days. Sometimes it's a perfume somebody has on, any kind of cleaning product. Sometimes I just overexert myself. I do too much, in the garden. It's basically when I breathe too much, or it's a chemical that really, it's just raw on my respiratory system. And then I get this vocal cord dysfunction that I have now. But again, if I would stop talking and not exert myself, just basically, I watch a lot of movies laying down in bed, and then I'm fine. Because these chemicals, the hotel used bromine, which is a chemical, to clean their pools on a regular basis, right? That's what their state calls for, bromine, bromine. Well, the day before I swam in this pool, they had shocked the pool with chlorine. Shocking the pool, it's just, think of it as throwing chlorine in the pool. It's an extra cleaning situation. And whenever you shock a pool, you're supposed to close the pool. Well, They didn't. So this pool had, and in fact, the maintenance man, once we obtained the county records for the lawsuit, it was found out the maintenance man didn't know how much bromine to put in and shocked the pool with chlorine. And here's the third problem. This pool had the ceilings were like 40 or 50 feet tall, and it had 3 sides that were glass. So what happens is, on an indoor pool, I don't want to scare y'all about all the pools, but this was an indoor pool. It had bromine in it, and then it was shocked with chlorine, and then the 3 sides of glass, the sun would just bake that toxic air down just above the water. So think about it. Every stroke I would take swimming in this pool, you come up for air and you kind of take in a deep breath for the next stroke, right? That's the basics of what happened to me. So I just want, first of all, to caution you all that things can happen overnight due to nothing you've done. It's all God's will. It's all God's timing. My husband at the time, I was married at the time, I did our finances, and I had us on point to be multi-millionaires by the time we were 65. Like I said, I'm going to be 64 soon. And that's on my mind too. Sorry. I've lived on Social Security disability for 20 years now. I was married at the time 15 years, and it was clear he was not going to take care of me when I got older, even though that was my deal. I was going to take care of him. He was 13 years older than me. And here's what. Even with all my sickness at the time, and I lost my job eventually. They put me on the family leave because, I'd work a week and then I'd be off a week and work a week and be off a week. So they took me in a room and, which I understood because that went on for months. And I understood they needed especially I was a director of sales. So, I had a lot of responsibility. And they needed someone there for that job full time. So I got it. I understood. But even going through the sickness and all these doctors and all that stress and depression and not knowing what was going to happen, I left my husband overnight too. Here's what happened. He was a golfer. A big-time golfer. Like, big time. And he was watching, I'll never forget, he was watching the Masters tournament on TV. And I was at the patio door with the door open, and I was gasping for air, grabbing my chest like I am now. And I looked back to motion that I needed help. I looked back and I watched him. He looked at me, gasping for air, and he turned his head back to the Masters, to the TV. I left him the next day. I took my little dog and moved in with a family member that we didn't care for each other, but I had nowhere else to go. So I'll do a video about the Social Security disability and the workers' comp and the lawsuit. And my doctor said, I was going through a major lawsuit, a divorce, losing a job I loved and all that money, and living with someone who didn't care for me. That's why I'm so strong now and why I can pretty much get through anything. I know I'm tearing up now, but it was 20 years ago. I still feel mostly the hurt. It was mostly the hurt about the divorce. I know you'd think it was about my health and all these doctors and not knowing exactly what was happening and losing that job. And it was more about the divorce. It was more about, I thank God now that I found out that this nitwit, my husband at the time of 15 years, was never going to take care of me. That's what hurts the most now, because I live alone and it's been really difficult dating. Really difficult dating. Watch for those videos. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. But so there's a couple more things I learned. One, it's all about God's timing and what his will is. And two, listen, don't worry about stuff you cannot change, right? Do what you can for things you know how to change. I've learned how to live with this. I've learned what my limit is. I've learned what the signs are I need to stop. So I just do that. I just know when is enough, right? When enough is enough. I know my body better than anybody. I know that now. I fight for everything. These doctors still, the ones that don't know me. So just hang in there if you're going through some kind of health crisis. I got disabled overnight, had this chronic illness, but I survived it. And I've lived on close to poverty level for 20 years now. I have my own little house. Not a dime in savings at soon to be 64. But I have a roof over my head. I'm healthier than a lot of people. And I still have hope that I'm going to find the love of my life. And I have my little rescue dog, Rosie. So anyway, hang in there. Please subscribe or watch the videos on, coming up on God's timing and how I got through all that, on the personal injury lawsuit, on living on low income. There's a lot of good stuff on my channel. So if you're going through something like that, or even if you're not, you probably know someone who is, and maybe send it to them. Maybe share it. Maybe share this video and it'll help others. Because there are a lot of folks out there who are going through some kind of health issue, and they're scared. Actually, the word is terrified, because they don't know what's going on, or they do know what's going on, and that's terrifying them. Because I think about that too. Who's going to take care of me when I get older? I pray every night that our government doesn't take away Social Security, because I cannot work. I've tried to work, a part-time job, The longest job I had was receptionist at a senior citizen center. I only worked there about 3 hours in the afternoon. But here's the thing, I had to answer the phone. And some days were bad days, like today. The bad days get you down, even though I know what my issues are, even though I have a lot of medications to help me control it. Breathing is something we all take for granted. I mean, breathing, it's not like I have a broken arm, right? I'm not gonna it still scares me even though I know what's happening. I mean, I have rescue inhalers, but it still scares me every time I have an episode. Like, I'm gonna have to go soon, like I'm having now. And of course, stress. Any kind of stress makes you breathe harder. Find the joy. Find what brings you joy. And do it whenever you can. Because you never know. You never know. I mean, even if you think, oh, I'll be fine, I'm married, I'll be fine, we're going to have, whatever, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank, plus both of our disability or pensions, or our house will be paid for. Listen. Just something as innocent as swimming in a pool took away all the money I had. It took away my home, my future. You never know. You never know. So find the joy you can. And remember those moments. I have moments that, and I have a video coming up about that too. I have 3 moments that I think back on when I want to laugh. They're so stupid, but it takes my mind away from whatever's happening at the time. All right. I'm going to have to go. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you learned anything from this, or if you're going through something like this. I appreciate y'all. This is Pop In with Robin. I'm Robin. I'm sorry I'm not really popping today. It's real talk, but it's kind of sad real talk. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll pray for y'all to be healthy and happy. And yeah, have a good day.